Hello friends, welcome to The Recap, the show where we go through some of the major talking points that surround the most recent round of Premier League fixtures. Today we have Arsenal taking a further march on the title, West Ham bouncing back after their dismal display at Tottenham, and a resilient Wolverhampton Wanderers picking up yet another point. Join me as we talk football. Please make sure you like and subscribe and all of that good stuff, it really would mean a lot to me. But now, let's dive into The Recap. We're going to begin with Fulham against Wolves, and I think on paper you could say that Fulham would have been the more dominant component in this game. I think they would have been the team that you would have looked towards to have really won this game and taken it away from Wolves. However, it was Wolves that got the first goal, and I actually have been quite impressed with Wolves over the last few weeks. I think they've got a recent steal in them, and you can see from the attacking momentum bar, they actually did give it a go as well, albeit through a bit of poor attacking play. They didn't manage to convert those chances into goals. But Fulham struggled really with Andreas Pereira not having his best game, and the lack of Alexander Mitrovic really did hurt the side. While they did manage to get down the flanks and really did cause some crosses through Willian and De Cordova-Reid, Vinicius just wasn't up to it. He failed his duels against the likes of Kilman and Dawson, and while I think they did a very good job, it was also through the middle that Wolves made sure they were very, very compact and stopped Fulham really playing through them. If we have a look at the average positions, you'll see exactly what I mean. While Fulham did make sure that they tried to go down the wings, they also weren't able to really break through the centre, and you can see that Palhinha and the likes of Andreas Pereira with Vinicius really stayed quite central, and that was right into Wolves' plan. I think they wanted to bolster the midfield because they backed their centre-backs to win the aerial duels against the Fulham striker. And if we have a look at Wolves' average positions, you can see that's exactly what happened. While they were a little bit more front-footed, we'll talk about that in just a moment, you can see that Hugo Bueno really did take up a high starting position. Semedo really did come down the side as well, but it was the midfield with Mateus Nunes, Sarabia, and then Neves with Lamina that did impress me. If you see, they're quite narrow, and the narrowness of this compact midfield with the two strikers meant that there were so many bodies in the middle of midfield, and this meant that Fulham almost had to go down the wings, something that Wolves wanted to because they knew that Kilman and Dawson were going to be able to win the headers. On an offensive sense, I was very impressed with the high line that Wolves held. Now, Craig Dawson did drop back a little bit deeper because he's a bit slower, but also Hugo Bueno and Semedo really did make some darting runs, and you're starting to see the Wolves attacking play come into fruition. I think it's going to still be a few more weeks, but even later on, you're going to be able to see Wolves really almost dominate possession and really start to pen teams in. It's that pressure from the flanks that will then create chances into the box, and I do see Wolves getting more goals later on down the line. There are some positive green shoots. If we have a look at some of the stats now, we can see that Fulham really did dominate a lot of the stats in terms of possession. They dominated in terms of shots and shots on target. However, it was Wolves who obviously got the higher XG. You can't see that, but if I just move that up, you can see it's 0.78 compared to Fulham's 0.46, and that kind of reinforces my point. They failed to really get anything into the game, and while they had a fantastic shot from Solomon, it really was very few and far between the really clear-cut chances that Fulham tried to create. Then finally, we can have a look at the duels won 65-55 and 19-11. Wolves did win their duels, so I do think they could probably feel aggrieved that they should have had a little bit more out of this game. They end the game 1-1, sharing the spoils, and I actually think that's a far better point for Wolves than it is for Fulham. It allows them to progress that little bit further up the table, whereas Fulham drop points in their search for Europe. A decent point for Wolves all round. Up next, we're going to be talking about Leicester against Arsenal, and why I think that Arsenal really did deserve to win the game. I thought that Leicester really didn't show the ambition that I expected them to. In the game against Manchester United, they gave it a go, and I think that's something that you can label against them today. I don't think they did give it a go. I don't think they did really manage to make anything happen. You can see from the attacking momentum bar that the home side seriously struggled. Now, that is down to the good play from Arsenal, but it's also down to a lack of real creativity and willingness to go forward. And perhaps the lacking of James Maddison really did impact this, but Dennis Pratt and Kieran Drewsbury-Hall really are some quite good creative players, and Harvey Barnes and Tete are some good attacking wingers. Iheanacho has his moments as well, but they never really managed to utilise or create any kind of clear-cut opportunity. As for the average positions, that pretty much tells that tale. It was a deep, low-lying midfield with the likes of Ndidi and Pratt next to each other. Dewsbury Hall moving next to Barnes, who dropped in a little bit deeper to try and help go against Saka. And then you have the same with Tete wanting to go forwards a little bit more, Iheanacho being dragged, just being isolated that little bit with the amount of Arsenal pressure. But it was Arsenal that I found to be the most interesting. If we have a look at this, you can see that Trossard was playing in this number 9 position, and I just don't think it really worked. While I do think that dropping in and moving about just shuffled the defenders somewhat, it didn't really help Arsenal, and if anything, it got in the way of Granit Xhaka's runs, and it also started to clog up the space for Martinelli. Zinchenko comes into midfield from that left-back position. You can see Gabriel coming around and covering. However, with this happening, I felt that this area just summed up Arsenal's play that day. It just became a little bit congested, a little bit predictable, and they started to step on each other's toes. There wasn't the balance that you see on this side. This is fantastic. Contrast the two sides and you can see the one that has been messed with. You can see Trossard has been cutting into this side and Martinelli has been drifting inside rather than having that overlapping run. Martinelli needs to stay wide if Zinchenko is going to come inside, because he's not going to have that width from the fullback. So I was surprised that Arsenal went with this lineup, and I'm also surprised that Mikel Arteta failed to really change things. But watch out for this, because teams will look at this and see as an exploitation, as an opportunity for them to really bounce back. And if they can take advantage of the confusion that's in this Arsenal side on their left-hand side, I do think it's going to be very interesting to see how that could play out. Having a look at some of the stats now, and I'm sure you can imagine, Arsenal did dominate the ball. However, only 0.66 expected goals, and that is something that needs to be talked about. With the amount of pressure that Arsenal had and only having an expected goals of 0.66, something is going wrong. On the flip side of that, Leicester with their 0.02 expected goals is something of a travesty. At home with no shot on target, one shot entirely, I didn't think they really did all too much. 34% possession, and I'm sure we can all assume that Arsenal were going to win the game. Even though it was 1-0, I thought Arsenal comfortably deserved it, and again, like I say, the lack of ambition that Leicester had really did hurt them. Finally, we're going to be talking about West Ham beating Forest by 4-0. Unambitious has been the main criticism of West Ham, especially in that game against Tottenham that they most recently lost by 2-0. However, that was not the case today. They actually went and had a go. They changed formation, and we're going to be having a look at it in just a moment. If we have a look at the attacking momentum bar, though, you can see that West Ham really dominated this game. I didn't think that Nottingham Forest really had anything going forwards, and while they did have a shout for a penalty claim, that was very quickly waved away. They need to go back and think at the drawing board, because something in this Nottingham Forest attack just didn't quite work. If we scroll down and have a look at some of the player positions, I was very impressed by Danny Ings, and who'd have thought when you bring an actual striker in who actually knows how to be a striker, it actually works. And I was incredibly impressed by his running, his movement, and his ability off the ball to try and find space. It's something that West Ham have lacked, and I do like Antonio, and I do think he's okay, but at the end of the day, he is a converted winger to a striker, and I just don't think that he has sometimes the natural instincts that a Danny Ings does to really be in the right place at the right time. That being said, he also got his goal, didn't he? So I'm not going to be too critical of him. But if we have a look at the West Ham positioning, there's something very, very interesting going on. David Moyes has been criticised, as I've said, for being a little bit unambitious. However, look at these player positions and tell me if you can see something that is a little bit amiss. Well, if you haven't figured it out, I'll show you. You have your right back, your centre back, your other centre back, and your left back. Where is he? He's actually here. He's in the middle of midfield, doing something that a lot of other teams tend to do at the moment. We've seen Zinchenko do it as well at Arsenal, drifting into midfield, partnering Declan Rice, allowing an extra attacker to go forwards, really dominating the ball and allowing that little extra option. This allowed West Ham to really make sure they were able to dominate possession and then get the ball into their front three players. That would be Danny Ings, Bowen and Ben Rama, who really did have some attacking threat. It also releases the likes of Paqueta to really drive forwards and really become that creative playmaker that we know that he is. As for Nottingham Forest, it really was a day to forget. John Joe Shelvey, I'm not too sure about him in this starting lineup. Colback or Freuler, who didn't have the worst of games, but Shelvey and Colback, I'm really not too concerned. I'm really not too happy with. I am very concerned, I should say. Chris Wood didn't have the greatest of days, and Brennan Johnson really did struggle to get into the game. That was pretty much the explanation for most of this Nottingham Forest side, unfortunately for them. We can have a look at the stats now, and we can see that West Ham really did dominate this game. 2.73 expected goals to Nottingham Forest 0.42. While Nottingham Forest did maintain possession, it really was only by the slightest of margins, and West Ham literally dominated everything else. You can see that they had more shots on target. They were the only team really going in the game, and as we saw by the attacking momentum bar and by the scoreline, they were the only team to really convert their chances. We can also see that although West Ham did lose most of their duels, they won their aerial duels, which is extremely important. You can't lose both. You have to win one of them, and the duels were quite close as well, 57 to 54. Nottingham Forest need to go back to the drawing board and find out what actually went wrong, because some of the goals were a little bit lackadaisical. Some of them just required a little bit more composure. Some of them required some more defensive stability, and West Ham at times did walk through that Nottingham Forest back line. Again, I was very impressed by Ben Johnson being able to drift into midfield to help out that defensive stability, but also to be an extra passing option for the likes of Agard and Ogbonna. This allowed Declan Rice to really go forwards as well, and Paquetá was able to help link up with the attack. An interesting and very attacking orientated option from David Moyes, who a lot of people, including this person you're listening to right now, thought he didn't have in him. West Ham were ambitious, West Ham were attacking, and they got their just rewards for it, beating Nottingham Forest by 4-0. Now, the question that I leave to you is, are West Ham safe from relegation? Let me know. Speaking of relegation, let's have a look at the Premier League table. But before we do that, let's talk about some of the games that happened that we haven't covered in detail. Leeds United got a massive win over Southampton. Southampton yet still at the bottom of the table and unable to get a win after appointing their new manager. Leeds United have appointed their new manager as well in Javi Gracia. If you haven't seen my video on how he will improve Leeds United, as has been shown by this result, please do go check it out. It is on my channel. West Ham, as we know, beat Nottingham Forest. Aston Villa getting a huge win with Unai Emery over Sean Dyche's Everton. Everton are not safe just yet, even though I do believe that Sean Dyche will be the man to keep Everton in the Premier League. They are losing points still. Bournemouth lose to Manchester City as well in this race for the title. Man City really asserting their dominance, really going up by 3-0 in the first half, and it was pretty much done and dusted after that. Bournemouth got a consolation winner, or a consolation extra goal I should say, after Manchester City decided to go and get another. It really was a bad day at the office for Bournemouth, but Man City go marching on. We then have the likes of Tottenham Hotspur against Chelsea. If you haven't seen my review of that game, that is also up on my channel. Crystal Palace drawing with Liverpool 0-0. A very, very dull and boring affair. Nothing really happening. Palace should have been 2-up in my opinion. However, they didn't manage to get their shot in on goal, and for that reason, the game ended 0-0. Liverpool need to find some way to organise attacks and orchestrate real momentum to go towards goal. They're struggling to really create a lot of clear-cut opportunities, and Crystal Palace did defend quite well, so the game ended 0-0. Let's finally end by having a look at the Premier League table for this recap, and as we can see, Southampton are still at the bottom of the table, 18 points after 24 games. Not good enough, but also they're not too far away. West Ham did jump up and 23 points after 24 games in 16th position. Everton stay where they are in 18th. Wolves gain an extra point, and now they are tied on points with Leicester. They are slowly starting to creep up the table, and that looks very, very good for the side from Molineux. As we scroll up the table, we can see that after Chelsea's loss, they stay in 10th. on 31 points after 24 games. What can Graham Potter do next? Is he the man to lead them forward for you? If he is not, what do you think the Chelsea should do? Should they stick with him until the end of the season, or should they make a change now? Let me know your thoughts. You can also let me know your thoughts on any of these teams in the Premier League. Tell me who you support, what you think is going to happen, and how you think the season is going to play out. Liverpool obviously stay in 7th. Fulham are in 6th position. 39 points after 25 games is a phenomenal return. As we know, Newcastle did not play, as neither did Manchester United, I should say, after they had their Carabao Cup final to play. Tottenham climb some more points and get 45. They are now 4 points behind Manchester United, having played a game more. Manchester City playing a game more than Arsenal. However, they've cut the gap to 2 points once more. Who is winning the title and who will be going on a run? Arsenal play their game in hand, funnily enough, in the Premier League on Wednesday. They play Everton, and what a cracking game that is set up to be, with all the lines in and around it. Everton did beat Arsenal in their reverse fixture, so what will happen this time? Time will tell. As I said, let me know your thoughts on your team and how you think their season will end. I would love to hear from you. That's it for today, guys. Thank you ever so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please leave the video with a like and subscribe if you haven't, for more content like this coming very soon. Make sure you hit that notification bell as well. You don't want to miss what's coming up in the near future. And as I said, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below on your team and how they have done this weekend. What's going to happen for them at the end of the season? Let me know. I would love to hear from you. But like I said, that's it from me for today. Thank you ever so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. And I hope to see you in the next one. But until then, my friends, take care of yourselves and bye-bye.